of Andor is spicy. Yes, Diego Luna is back as another charismatic rebel in one of the saddest love stories you'll ever see. This movie made me cry, although Andor actually ended up being a pretty sad love story as well. And this movie is just as timely as Andor, not just for its commentary on what it's like to live in a police state, but representing the LGBTQ community, particularly in this case, a trans person. Or, since this story takes place in the 1980s, before today's significant medical advancements, someone who wishes they were trans. Jennifer Lopez hopes to be the star of this movie. Spoiler alert, she's not. But she's going around with a pretty good pitch as she campaigns for award season for Kiss of the Spider-Woman. And she's been saying that this movie represents both the Latino and LGBTQ communities that are both under fire right now. And I was like, that's a darn good pitch, JLo. But you know what else she's saying that I thought of while I was watching this movie is that she wanted to do this this movie as a story. You know, there's been many forms of this story already: a book, a movie, a play, like a musical. And this is, you know, while William Hurt, you know, this was an Oscar-winning film already, this is the first time the musical version has been brought to the silver screen. And Lopez is going around saying that not only that other thing, but that this is the role she was born to play. Which is ironic, because when you actually watch the movie, this is the role that Tonatiuh was born to play, because he is a star with a capital S. And in fact, JLo's pretty bad in the movie. So it's interesting that she's saying that, and this is how it turned out. In fact, it's been a very long time since we've seen someone virtually come out of nowhere as the lead in a movie, not even supporting, a lead, and just blow everyone away with their commanding performance. If Jennifer Lopez wasn't weighing this whole movie down, that's right, she's not only not good in it, but she's weighing the whole thing down. And if some of the tonal issues were resolved, Tonatiuh would be a shoo-in for a Best Actor nomination, and maybe even a win. Anyone who's interested in cinema, the film industry, and the art of acting should see this film for Tonatiuh's performance alone. He's that good. I just was like, where'd this guy come from? I mean, he's amazing. So let's talk about what's good and not so good about this new Kiss of the Spider-Woman. It's particularly ironic, and depending how you feel about Lopez, maybe also a little funny, that just like the Smashing Machine, the only reason this movie came into existence is because Jennifer Lopez wants an Oscar, or at least a nomination after she was snubbed for Hustlers. She was so much better in Hustlers. Here, she's got a bunch of problems. First off, there's that darn blonde wig. I mean, she looks beautiful. But with this wig, she totally loses her JLo identity. And she's not a good enough actress to create a new identity. So she just becomes like, she just like gets blown out, right? Because what's always made her stand out is her identity as the superstar Latina performer. And so when you take that away, I'm afraid there's nothing left. When she looks like herself and can use her superstar persona to her benefit, she does a much better job. Her best musical number by far, and I think the best musical number in the movie, is Where You Are. That was really good. You know, what's funny about this movie is it gets better and better as it goes along. Like when it starts, you're like, I don't know about this. But then after a while, you're just swept away in it. And she does a very good job as the titular Spider-Woman. She looks really cool in that getup. And she moves very well. She did a nice job there. Her costumes are amazing and do most of the heavy lifting for her when her acting cannot kick in. But she's very lucky here. Well, she put this film together, so she was smart to get legendary costume designer Colleen Atwood to provide the costumes. But again, that blonde wig is a real problem. She comes off as a knockoff Nicole Kidman, actually, instead of being JLo. Just when she has the wig on. Otherwise, she's JLo, and it's much better. Then, another big problem is her huge third wheel energy. It's not good whenever you come on the screen. People are like, no, get out of here. Let's go back to Luna and Tonatiuh's amazing story and performances. I mean, their chemistry is so incredibly strong that Lopez becomes like a disruption to their story rather than a great new component. It also doesn't help that they're both acting their butts off. They're incredible. They're delivering rich, nuanced performances. And then here comes JLo in a blonde wig, and she doesn't even go super camp, which I think would have worked with the way things are set up here. To have these heartfelt, amazing performances, in the real section of the film, in the prison cell, and then, in the fantasy to go full camp. I mean, she looks fabulous, but she's just there. Even her dancing, for the most part, seems like, you could almost hear her counting in her head. I mean, and she's a really good dancer. It's, maybe she was intimidated by the material. It just doesn't work. And then the film, one of the greatest things about the film is that it shows how we insert ourselves and others into our fantasies. That was a great element. That put a smile on my face as they set that up. But then you're like, well, why don't we just go for it and swap Tonatiuh out for Lopez, right? And the movie star part of the fantasy. I mean, eventually they do that, and it's very effective, but it takes I think, obviously this was written a while ago when society and cultural norms and expectations were very different. So I think today you're like, why are we dragging our feet on this switch? This switch should have been made immediately. And so I think that hurts the film a little bit. But let's talk about the amazing performances from not only Tonatiuh, but also Diego Luna as well. The nuances of Tonatiuh's performance are so incredible, they really demand to be seen. One moment he's hysterical with terrific comedic line readings. He's so funny. But then the next moment, he's devastatingly heartbreaking with just a look. The range this guy has. His Molina is a man-child, sheltered not just by choice, but by society that doesn't want to let him in. And when Luna's Valentine tells Molina, "Oh, you're not a monster, you're a man," Molina, who longs to be a woman, gives Valentine such a heartbreaking look. You can tell that being called a man to Molina is worse than being called a monster. I thought this was a beautiful movie depicting the trans perspective. What's brilliant about the love story here is that Molina is all about romance and fantasy, idealization, while Valentine is much more practical. If the movie makes any mistake at all with their story, it's softening Valentine, making it almost seem towards the end that maybe Molina's fantasy is true. Because in the original story, even Valentine uses Molina's fantasy against him to his own advantage, against Molina to Valentine's own advantage. Their conversations in the cell are fascinating. Not only as you see them get closer together, but their arguments are a lot like the ones we see so often from different vantage points on social media. It reminded me a little bit of Barbie versus Oppenheimer fans, only in a 1980s Argentinian prison. Like, it was just the fantasy, versus it was just amazing. I mean, but, and writing off, something is just fantasy and refusing to see under, it was just really, really cool. Luna is, as always, fantastic in his role, and a very different take on a revolutionary. Handsome for sure, but hardly a heroic knight in shining armor. It was interesting, they played up his spaghetti arms and legs as he walks around the cell in his dirty underwear, and I wondered why they made that choice. And as I thought about it, I realized that it's to underscore again that Molina just gets so lost in fantasy rather than face reality. He just turns Valentine into his knight in shining armor. It's really very interesting, as I said, and their scenes I think would benefit from multiple viewings to catch all the layers and hidden meanings. They really do a wonderful job. What's funny about the movie is that Molina says that he loves The Kiss of the Spider-Woman, the movie within the movie, but he realizes it's not a great movie, but he likes it anyway. And that's a perfect way to describe this film. So let's talk about the production itself. The lighting for the film is really off. I mean, clearly, visually, a big inspiration for the film is Chicago, which Rob Marshall might have directed, but Bill Condon, who of course has gone on to direct a lot of fantastic movies, he wrote that film, which was a really important moment in his career. So now he gets to go back and direct a musical, which is very similar. And I think Chicago had a couple of lighting issues too, to be honest with you. It ended up winning a lot of awards, but I wasn't a fan of the lighting there either. So if you liked the lighting in Chicago, maybe it won't bother you here. But it really bothered me. So to be fair, some of the musical numbers do work out, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But a lot of the scenes, particularly in the prison, have television lighting. That really surprised me. And then the musical scenes in the movie that Molina is retelling, they feel like a filmed stage show rather than an actual film. So the lighting problems in both areas make the film not seem very cinematic. It doesn't, to me, actually feel cinematic at all, like most of the time. A couple of times it rises above, but I'd say maybe like 80% it didn't feel like a movie. Also, occasionally, the scenes, so tonally, that's another problem. The scenes in the prison cell sometimes take on a Dear Penthouse quality, where getting Molina and Valentine into a potentially intimate situation seems too manufactured, too convenient, too forced. And it breaks the film's spell, and it makes it seem a lot less serious. And I gotta tell you, I didn't really like the songs. I don't know if you're a fan of the musical, maybe that won't be an issue for you. But I thought that a lot of them felt generic, like they were simply like placeholders, like insert song here. And you're like, well, okay, I guess it works. And then also some of them, even when they did work, I felt were too rushed. There wasn't enough of a musical number there. My favorite numbers were, by far, Where You Are. That was really, really incredible. And the most like Chicago, interestingly enough. She's a Woman, the I Want song, was beautiful and such a pivotal moment in the movie that I was surprised that it was so short. So that really kept it from resonating, I think, the way that it should. And then Gimme Love, which I only thought was okay as a song, but the production design was really phenomenal. And it was clearly inspired by Gene Kelly's Singin' in the Rain. Speaking of Barbie, that movie also inspired the Ken musical number for Barbie. Now, at the end of this movie, the musical number, the big musical number that they have, while it's very meaningful and poignant, it overall isn't strong enough to compete with the heartbreaking scene that's happening in the reality of the film. So the last moments are horribly out of balance. So those are the negatives about the production, but there are some positives. So let's talk about those. When Molina promises Valentine in their prison cell to deliver an old school Technicolor musical, courtesy of Molina's childhood memories of seeing this film, and then also his embellishments of it, boy, does he deliver. The fantasy parts of this film are beautiful, from the production design to the costume design to the color of the film. I mean, it really has that Technicolor pop, which you don't really see that much these days. It put a smile on my face as someone who loves Technicolor musicals. And as I said, Molina is retelling the film. It's seen through his eyes, and he shapes it into a very powerful fantasy for himself. So to see how he inserts himself and Valentine into the movie is not only very moving, but also very clever. I really love the way that they did that. That was fantastic. Molina is a breath of fresh air and happiness, not just in that prison cell, but for the movie itself. And so when Molina eventually falls into despair, at that point, Valentine and the audience are so locked in with him, it's devastating to see. It's really fantastic. So if, like Molina, you love a good Technicolor musical and the grand actresses of the 1930s and 40s, you will enjoy this film. Like he does. You'll agree it's not the best film ever made, but heck if it isn't still really enjoyable. And thanks to Tonatiuh's performance and Condon's screenplay, I really do believe it's the best commercial mainstream film that Hollywood has made to date about a trans person. I think it comes at a really, charged but poignant time to show this perspective. It's just really beautiful. So I wish the entire film was as good as Tonatiuh's performance, and at points it is. And JLo, well, she just really weighs the whole thing down, but she has her moments as well. But if you're at all interested in this material and you want to see a star being born, hopefully with Tonatiuh, I think it's worth seeing. If not in theaters, then down the line on digital or streaming. As a Critics' Choice member, I've been voting the past few years. This year we're first up, so I think that Critics' Choice has a little more weight this year in the influencing the awards circuit. And I'm definitely voting for Tonatiuh for Best Actor, for sure. Now, as for other possible nominations for this film, I'm considering costume design and production design, but it's still early days. But for me, Tonatiuh is a lock, at least for me, for a nomination. He's just incredible. All right, so that's my review of this new Kiss of the Spider-Woman hitting theaters October 10th with awards dreams. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.